Okay, we're streaming live on Facebook now.
All right, let's get into this.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's the Oregon Area Progressives here to talk to you about all things voting in Wisconsin. I'm going to close this door. All right. So Beth, you want to start us out tonight?
I sure do. I am fired up and ready to go, as somebody once said. All right, tonight, Carlene and I are going to talk about a number of things. I'm going to start off talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy, what's at stake in the fight for her Supreme Court seat, where do we go from here, and an update on the recent federal court decision on voting. I'll let you in on a little secret. It changes nothing, but we'll get to that later. All right. I want to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg first as a tribute, because I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what the situation was when she stepped into the law and she saw things and decided to change them. I want people to understand her brilliance and her humility, and that those two things led her to make major changes. She stepped into the law and she was able to make major changes that affected people's lives, that affected my life and anybody born right now, anyone who's alive right now. Back in 1970s, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the founder and general counsel of the ACLU's Women's Rights Project. In 4 years, by 1974, 300 gender discrimination cases had been filed across the country. The brilliance of this, I want to convey. Each case, she established a precedent that she could build on. And the interesting thing about Justice Ginsburg is that she had her biggest impact on the lives of women before she was on the Supreme Court. She was incredibly strategic. She looked around. There still is no equal rights amendment. How do you make the law apply to women equally? She took a look at the 14th Amendment. That was one of the Reconstruction amendments that was passed in 1868. And she saw that as a hook that she could hang various decisions on that would be building and would snowball into equal rights across the board. I'm going to read you just briefly the key phrases in that 14th Amendment. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. And here's the big one. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. This was in 1868, and it extended, the goal of that 14th Amendment was to extend the privilege of citizenship to the newly freed Black slaves. Nobody anticipated women. Women couldn't vote for another 50, 60 years. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg was looking for a hook on which to bring her cases and argue them. Single-handedly, she was able to extend the coverage of the 14th Amendment to women in all walks of life. Let me give you some examples. 1973, the Frontero case, it barred gender discrimination in the compensation of military members. So women had to be paid the same as men in the military. 1975, Weinberger, striking down discrimination in state benefits. Men could not get more unemployment compensation, for example, than women, simply based on gender. She argued many cases. Oh, there's another one in 1971, the Reed case. It may have been her first one, struck down the Idaho law favoring men over women in a state battle. So a woman couldn't bring in a case. She couldn't represent her deceased child in a case. Only men could do that. She argued cases often with men as plaintiffs in front of all male judicial panels because she wanted to show how men could be equally discriminated against. She was so smart because she understood how to speak to people. One of my favorite quotes from Justice Ginsburg is the following: "Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." So she combined brilliance with humility. And those two traits enabled her to bring people along with her who disagreed with her. She had to do that because she was arguing in an all-male environment in front of all men. At the time that she was arguing these cases in the 70s, much of the family, tax, and financial law was based on and codified on the concept that men were the breadwinners and women were dependents.
White men.
Thank you, Carlene. White men. Let's be clear. Thank you. Within 5 years, from 1971 to 1976, all of these laws were declared unconstitutional through her work. For example, 1971, Reed versus Reed. Women could now get credit cards. Before that, they couldn't. I made a list of all the things that women couldn't do until Ruth Bader Ginsburg came along. I'm going to read you that list because I lived through this list. I was born in 1950 and was 20 in 1970. So in the 1970s, before Ruth Bader Ginsburg was so successful, married women could not get birth control. That didn't happen until 1965. Married women could not report rape by their husbands. In fact, the marital exemption for rape was not eliminated until, wait for it, 1993. Women could not report workplace discrimination on the basis of pregnancy until 1978, another Ginsburg case. Women could not get a credit card until 1974 unless they had a husband who would co-sign it or some male who would co-sign that application. And until Ginsburg held in 1976, the VMI, Virginia Military Academy case, women could not attend military academies in the United States. Women could not obtain abortions legally until 1973 in Roe v. Wade. And until 1975, women could not serve on juries in every state in this country. That was the landscape that Ruth Bader Ginsburg graduated cum laude from her law school and started to practice law.
I missed several of those. I tried to put them in. I missed several of those. I tried to put them in the comments, but I missed
That's
them.
all right. I can get there. I can put those in later. So the brilliance of how she expanded the 14th Amendment to include equal protection for women, that was akin, although in a different era and in a different field, to the way Thurgood Marshall took a look at cases and argued them as well. The great, great lawyers and jurists of our time look ahead and they play the long game. And that's really important for us to remember right now as we look ahead as to what may happen with her vacancy, her seat. And it'll always be her seat, I'm sorry. There are two candidates that look as though Trump is going to nominate them. One is Amy Coney Barrett, 7th Circuit Court of Appeals judge, and the other is a woman named Barbara Lagoa from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Trump has said that he's going to nominate a woman, and I didn't even let my mind go to what that employment interview would look like. Moving ahead, what we have here, and remember I talked about the long game? We haven't been very good as progressives in playing the long game across the board. Well, the conservatives have been playing the long game on judicial appointments for a long time. They are working out of a playbook that has been developed by the Federalist Society, which is a group of very conservative judicial people and lawyers and others. And their primary hallmark is that they want thinkers on the court who are what is called originalists. And let me explain that. I think it's totally bogus, but there's a theory out there that the Constitution as it was developed in 1789 was the original document, and we don't want to stray too far from that. Now let's keep in mind who was excluded in 1789. Women, Black people, any person of color, any person who did not own property. Only white men with property could vote. Those were the people that the framers envisioned. Now, the beauty of our system
6% of the population
could
6%.
met those criteria. Thanks, Carlene. So a very, very small number of the largest of the people in the country. The beauty of our Constitution, and I think it is a beautiful document, is that it has expanded. It has become organic. Look at all the amendments to the Constitution. As Jefferson said, every generation should have its own Constitution. There were many people in that Constitutional Convention who had a very different notion of what the country should be. And by and large, we followed that. These originalists, so-called originalists, want to take us back to a very strict and, I would argue, inane definition of what the Constitution is.
Oppressive.
Oppressive. So these judges have all been selected by have been vetted, and the list that Trump's been given and a lot of Republicans use is from the Federalist Society. Now, there's also a lot of talk about business interests and funding all these, but the fact of the matter is that the conservatives have played the long game and they've been successful. It never should have come to the fact that we had to rely on one woman who was the single vote that kept a solid right-wing hard right conservative majority from forming on the court. We should have been active years ago. We should have been in the streets when they actually stole the Garland seat. We let it happen, but that's okay because we have the future and we have our now. So I do think that McConnell has the votes, but we'll see what happens. In any event, if he's successful, we're going to have a 6-3 solid, hardcore, hard right majority on the Supreme Court. And we can have that for 30 years because these two women are fairly young. They're in their 40s and 50s. Now, it's not simply about women's rights. I want everyone out there to understand that a hard right 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court will mean overturning environmental protections. It means forget about a Green New Deal. It means the Affordable Care Act and the protections for pre-existing conditions and health care for many, many people during the middle of a pandemic will be taken away. Regulatory powers. These people do not believe in having a strong regulatory presence in the government. The FDA, you can see how Trump has weakened regulatory agencies. So if you're young, if you have any interest in the rest of your life, you're going to be sitting up and taking notice right about now. And my hope is that you're going to mobilize. Oh, did I mention birth control? You can forget about birth control. All right. So folks, we could have a congressional and presidential sweep, but we could also have a majority in the House and Senate that's blue, and we could have a progressive president who is blue and have a hard right majority on the Supreme Court representing a minority of this country in all ways, in color, in shape, in size, and ideology, striking everything down. So what are we going to do about that? Well, I would say we take Ruth Bader Ginsburg and we honor her memory by taking what she said to heart. You fight for what you care for in a way that brings others with you. Immediately, Indivisible is having a postcard campaign to try to reach out to Republican senators. You can join that, you can get on that. We'll be posting information on how to do that. But primarily, what we can control, we focus on what we can control. We vote in overwhelming numbers, we vote early, and we vote blue across the board. And then when we sweep the country, as I really believe we will, then we hold the Democrats' feet to the fire for the structural changes we're going to need, because it's about time we took a hard look at the number of justices at the Supreme Court. It's about time we incorporated voting rights fully into the Constitution. It's about time we overturned Citizens United with a constitutional amendment. It's about time we passed the damn Equal Rights Amendment so that we don't have to go piecemeal. So if you thought you were going to have the luxury of curling up in a ball and eating chocolates and watching Netflix, I've got another thing for you to think about. You're going to get up and get out. You're going to help elect Democrats, and then you're not going to go home, because we didn't play the long game. We weren't like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We didn't look ahead and we weren't strategic. Can't do that anymore. Democracy, as they say, is not a spectator sport. And I promise you this, we will lose our democracy if we don't become active. So for ways to do that and how to make sure I was going to talk about the federal court decision for one moment. So we had a federal court decision. It's not very important, in my opinion. It extended the deadlines for counting ballots from the close of polls on Election Day, which is the current law, to November 9th, the Monday after Election Day. Of course, this is going to be appealed. Of course, we don't know the final outcome. And of course, it changes nothing. Nothing that's going to happen between now and November 3rd, frankly, is going to change our advice, OAP's advice to you. You vote, you help others vote, you vote early, you take that absentee ballot, you get it in the mail no later than October 16th. After that, you walk it in to either a drop box, or you walk it into the clerk, or you go into your clerk's office and you actually vote there, either absentee before Election Day or on Election Day proper. So nothing changes. And now to hopefully show you how we can keep Justice Ginsburg's spirit with us, Carlene is going to speak about voting and activities you can do.
Thanks, Beth. I've been trying to get a lot of your commentary into the comments just so folks have something to refer to. I love especially Ruth Bader Ginsburg's quote that many of us have heard before: fight in a way that brings others along with you. Because I think that that is one of the things that we try to do at Oregon Area Progressives. We try to inspire and include, and sometimes we can go down rabbit holes, but in general, we are very much about supporting one another and being a part of our community. So before I show you how to make sure that you're able to get your absentee ballot, I just want to talk a little bit about self-care, because as Beth alluded, it's kind of the time where we would like to be able to just curl up in a ball on our couches and watch mindless television. For me, that's HGTV. Don't know why. Most of those houses aren't things that I even like, but it takes my mind. I just go to some other place. And you know what? That's okay to do now and then. It is okay to do now and then, because self-care is a really important piece of the long game. If we just get ourselves worked into a dither, as my dad used to say, we work ourselves into a dither, we don't think clearly. We don't speak clearly. We don't engage others. We don't really listen because we feel like crap. And we are letting ourselves get into a space that says there's nothing I can do. The world is doomed. And, you know, that's just not the case. I was raised in the rural South at a time when schools weren't integrated, when things were, believe it or not, in some respects, worse than they are now in some parts of the country. And my parents set an example. They lived in hope. They lived in the future, if you will. I mean, not that they weren't present, because they were always present, but they also lived in what was yet to come, what they were building, what would be better. And, you know, things are better. Things are better for me than they were for my mother. Things were better for her than they were for her mother. And things are better for my daughter and my granddaughters. And I have 4 of them. 4, all my grandchildren are girls. And it's better for them. And so I think it's really important for us to, as we are engaged in this struggle, that we keep in mind that we have to take care of ourselves on a personal level and think about the reasons why we do these things. We're not, I personally am not doing this necessarily for me. I'm doing this for my daughters and my granddaughters and for my students, my former students, for a lot of people who haven't been born yet, because I want them to have a future. And so if this was just about me, yeah, I'd curl up on a couch, because you know what? I'm sorry, I'm gonna swear. I feel like shit about this, but I can't go there. And so taking that time away to, for me, play in my garden, watch GTV at the end of the night when my brain doesn't want to settle down, to just distract myself. Those are important things to do to keep ourselves grounded in just being human. So I just needed to say that because I need to give myself that pep talk now and then, just to make sure that I am staying grounded. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to walk you through how to get your ballot, if you haven't done that already. So opening a new tab here, don't laugh at all the tabs that I have open. I'm gonna go to my vote, oops, come on, type in there, myvote.wi.gov. And it comes up to a screen that looks like this. I have a lot of options here. If I want to check to make sure I'm registered, I can do that. If I want to look at what's on my ballot, I can do that. If I want to track my ballot, I can do that. So these are all options that you have. You know, if you want to first check to make sure that you're registered to vote, you put in your name. You're all going to see how old I am. And search. And it says, yes, in fact, you are registered to vote. Excellent. So I'm registered to vote. Now, if I want to request my absentee ballot, because I am registered to vote, I go here and I just say vote absentee. Now, if I do this, it's going to tell me that I'm a registered voter, and I have already requested mine, but I can view my request. If you haven't requested already, you can make your request. And look, it tells me exactly what has happened. I requested in July, it was approved, it was prepared on the 15th, it was sent out on the 18th, it was delivered on the 19th. And look at that, my ballot is in, score, I have voted. So there's lots of things that you can do on this site. It's really important that you go onto the website. You make sure you're registered. You request your absentee ballot and then track it. So they got mine today, which is amazing because I just mailed it yesterday. And that's awesome. So please take the time, go on to myvote.wi.gov, find out if you're registered. If not, register right here online and request your absentee ballot. Once you've requested your absentee ballot, you can go, you can track it every step of the way. If you want to know what's on your ballot, it tells you that too. You can actually take a look. I'll do one more thing here. You can take a look at what's on your ballot. And it will tell you, voting for the President of the United States. I live in Mark Pocan's district. I live in Don Brewing's district. I'm in Dane County, so I'm going to vote for the district attorney, the clerk, the treasurer, the registrar of deeds. There are no referendum on the ballot in the Village of Oregon, so I don't have that. In other words, this, and look, you can even print this so that when your ballot comes, or if you choose to go to the polls, you can take it with you, know what you want to do. So please do it as soon as possible. And what's the date again, Beth? After October, you're muted.
After October 16th, drop your ballot. Do not use the US mail. Drop the ballot into one of the drop boxes in the village or town of Oregon. After that, if it gets even closer, you might want to walk it into the village or town hall where they'll accept it. Now, I think next week we're going to make sure everyone has completed their envelope correctly. We'll take care of that and show you folks. But should you make a mistake or should you have an issue, it's not a problem. You can call the clerk and tell them you didn't get your ballot if that's the case, or you made a mistake, and they will issue you a new ballot. There are no mistakes.
Can I just tell you about a mistake? My mother is here from North Carolina with us. Before she came, I requested her absentee ballot. It came and I used one of those letter openers and I sliced her ballot. I was like, oh my Lord, I sliced my mother's ballot. I called the number. I talked to the clerk in Mecklenburg County, which is where Charlotte is, huge county. She said, okay, here's what you do. And I took a picture of it. I sent it to the email to her attention. We wrote a note. She said, it'll be fine. You just need to give us permission to mark her ballot on a different ballot and we will put it right through. The clerks really want us to be able to vote.
That's right. Also a plug on October, I think it's October 5th, we're going to have Mary Beth, and I've forgotten her full name. We're going to have the clerk from the city of Madison, who's a dynamo. Huh?
October 2nd.
I'm sorry, it's October 2nd. It's the first Friday in October. The clerk from Madison, who is a dynamo, will talk about processes there. They can, at this point, use more poll workers. If you're interested, call OAP. We now have a phone number. Let me give it to you. If you have questions about voting, if we can answer them, we will. If not, I'll refer you. If you want to volunteer to work at Madison polls, fine. If you want to volunteer for other activities, you call us. Our number is 608-909-1518. It's on our website, but I'm going to post it. I'm going to post it in Facebook, but also tell you again, it's 608-909-1518. Do we have any questions, Carlene?
No, it's just me posting.
Okay.
So we really appreciate folks getting on, and we hope that you will share any of these things widely that you think are helpful. We are here because we care, and we'll be here every week in some form. And just to keep you up on the latest, I just wanted to share one thing that I thought was really cool. Today is National Voter Registration Day, and the Brewers sponsored a drive-through voter registration in their parking lot at Miller Park today. So there were about 40 volunteers there to register voters, and it was widely publicized, hoping that a lot of people did that and that a lot of people registered online today, because there was certainly lots of information out about it, and it's never been more important in my lifetime ever to vote. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is it time to say goodnight?
I think it is. I think
All right. Good night, folks.
Good night, Beth.
Good night, Carly. Bye-bye.